Hey tigresses and tigers, I want to share something around fears and how we can handle our fears when they are coming up. And again, this episode is inspired by the current global situation that is mainly triggered by war, I think, also by this kind of traumatic dynamics around COVID. I think all of us are affected by both topics to one level or another. And so coming from this deep feeling of fear of being threatened in my health, threatened in my safety, threatened in where I live, if I can live with my family without having to be afraid of bombs, of war, of terror, of trauma around. All of that, of course, it's an incredibly deep trigger. I would say there is no deeper way to trigger a human nervous system just because we are healthy and we know that everything that is about aliveness and juice and joy of life is based on us feeling basically safe where we are and that we are allowed to stay there and that we can do something for our own safety. So the moment that this is taken away, of course, we wake up into a nightmare, so to speak. And then what I see a lot happening around is that people lose orientation and lose a sense for themselves because they just jump into hyperactivity, which of course then leads to further burnout instead of further clarity and orientation in the situation. So let me give you an example of what I saw a lot happening around, because I think it's perfect for illustrating what I want to be talking about in this episode. And that is that I'm living in Germany, and Germany in this moment is not directly involved into a war. So there are no bombs falling around me. So I have an incredibly safe place at the moment while I am doing this episode. And all the people around and in my life, they are not directly affected by war, but incredibly directly in their trigger system. And many of them reported to me, I'm afraid of nuclear bombs and a nuclear war. And I totally get that this at the moment is something that seems to be so much higher at a risk than in other times. And to some extent it might be. However, I think all of us can also relate if you start being sleepless from now on because you are so afraid of a nuclear war. There is also something that we can call irrational in a way of, okay, that's at least too soon. And of course, it doesn't lead to anything because if you are sleepless or not, if there is a nuclear bomb falling, then you will be dead, like pretty certainly. So what can we do with that? I think two major components are super relevant when it comes to deep fears that are really around our root chakra, around our basic needs of, okay, I need no radioactivity around in that dose because then I will die and everything else around as well. And I want to have some kind of certainty that I'm safe where I am. And what can we do with that? First of all, our culture teaches us to disembody, to dissociate from our feeling when it comes to death or risks or dangers that feel potentially deadly to us. And that also I see is something that we feed with our current scene around spirituality and new age and movement and embodiment and especially yoga. It's incredibly closely linked to vitality, to youth, and to fitness. And all of that is such a shame because it's like our whole world of embodiment, our whole world of aliveness gets defined by a scene that just is a lot also, let's be honest, about Instagram instead of about really holistic vitality and radical aliveness. All of that, all of this movement and embodiment scene gets defined around the pole of life versus death. So we associate our body with the vital parts, with the good, the sunny sides of life. And we define our death with something where it's like, okay, we fucked it up anyway, so we can die in our head, we can die dissociated, we can die numbed out, we can die however and wherever. It doesn't matter because we lost the battle. So that is a huge mistake and comes with a huge cost, because our embodiment, our instincts, something that I want to, this is a footnote. Sorry. Thank you for jumping with me in my head. This is a footnote. I want to share more also publicly. At the moment, I only shared in small groups, because I think there is a lot of potential explosivity or explosiveness around like spiritual or mystic teachings. But I want to talk a little bit more in further episodes, or maybe other whatever online formats, about our mystic instincts, our mystical nervous system, our mystical instincts are kind of the copied version, vice versa, or the other way around, the copied version, the other way around of our biological instincts. So the moment our biological instincts are navigating ourselves through things that are on the superficial level seen as alive and vital and useful, etc., and healthy, in the same moment, in the same amount, our mystical instincts are navigating us with shamanic precision inside and total absolute certainty through death, through war, through torture, through terror, through trauma. So our whole embodiment is our whole embodiment concept, and our whole use of the potential of embodiment is not even 50% if we just stare at what we can do when we are having a good time, because only completing the whole picture is taking ourselves serious by also using our mystical instincts. So I ask you, I challenge you to embody even more in times of war. The closer the war, the more I ask you to sense it as a vibration in your nervous system. And to maybe, if you are spending sleepless nights at the moment, then you can spend them vibrating and shivering and standing up and doing whole body shaking all night long. We do not have to lay down there immobilized as if we are overpowered in this very moment. There is a huge challenge inside to not underestimate the charge of death, the challenge of death. To some extent, I know it doesn't make sense on the practical level, or let's say in the world of visibility, but the challenge is nothing smaller but die with open eyes. Die with open eyes. Breathe into death. Die with an open, deep inhale of death. This is the challenge, and this is your potential. And yes, biologically speaking, it doesn't make sense because you exhale while you are dying and you are closing your eyes. I get it. But on the mystical level, we open our eyes even more during death, the more we close them down during dying on the biological level. And we inhale the even deeper, the more we exhale on the biological level. So this is not at all about finding anything positive in war happening around. There is no such thing like a positive side effect of war. War is just the depth of horror. But the depth of horror is not defined as the end of your experience. So on a meta level, the incredible challenge of there is just suffering happening around, and it tears your heart into pieces. On the meta level, this is you waking up to you having an absolute, having an unconditional potential that is written in your nervous system, and you can tap into the mystical superpowers of your nervous system. And this is really about your nervous system. So this is really somatic mysticism. It's somatic. I say it again. So my spiritual landscape or experience is completely based on my feet and not at all in any sense of or any kind of bypassing, not at all. So if you tap into your nervous system, you will discover not only your biological strength and survival skills and courage, but also your mystical, the mystical side of all of that, which is to some extent even more awake and of course more needed for so many people around and for your own safety in times of absolute unsafety than what we are using in this culture. So this is me talking about how you can handle your fears and meeting them with embodiment and mystical courage, no matter what, and radical aliveness and radical openness for death as well in times of horror, war, and trauma. And I wanted to be talking about another aspect, and that is what I will be spending another episode on, because I have been talking for much longer than what was planned. Okay, thank you for listening. Thank you for opening your eyes even more and inhaling it all, inhaling it deeply. And let's keep exploring the mystical sides of the nervous system. Again, you can also let me know what you're curious about when it comes to somatic mysticism and our mystical instincts. At the moment, my research is pretty nourished by the triggers around and is to some extent waiting to be put out into the English world as well. So if you have any questions or aspects or curiosities around that, I'm happy to try to design some formats, some calls, some episodes of this podcast. So I'm very happy if you subscribe to this podcast. If you subscribe to my newsletter as well, you will be, of course, up to date around anything that happens in my world around somatic mysticism. Okay, bye.